Well,
Well, whenever Philip Copeland's in the room, then I have to make sure I'm here.
Oh, you
yeah, he
funny.
did say that. He absolutely did say, Philip is my buddy. I'm going to be on time today.
My
So thank you,
buddy.
Philip. Philip, you're invited to all of our meetings, but
I
let's get
love
started.
it.
All right, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Today is August 12th. This is the C committee. We have a quorum, but let's call the roll. Representative Best,
Present.
Representative Goulet.
Present.
I am Representative Colson. I am present, and Dr. Fleischer is here. I am so excited about this meeting today. We have two gentlemen that I am happy to work with in my day job, and I'm excited about the work that they're doing, the work that they're doing that is progressing, and the work that they're doing that is going to help us with our policies and our discussion as we resume SBOE, which will be back in session in August. So I feel like I want to do introductions. I feel like this is a bit of our talk show. It's not, I understand this policy, but that's the vibe that I'm getting. So I've been working with Ernest, and I think I've seen his face one time. I saw him at a training last year at UDC. But as the bullying POC for my school, I get to send him reports every year. And this year, that report was a little more extensive. Usually, I'm used to about 5 questions. This year, we got about 20 different questions. So I would love to know from Mr. Ernest why that report has extended. And then Mr. Copeland. Mr. Copeland has been in the office of the deputy mayor, but now he has expanded to a new office under that umbrella. I'm excited to hear how we got here and what the work will look like as we get ready for the school year to kick off. So let me do it this way. Whose birthday is first? That's who I would like to hear from first. What month?
September.
April.
April. All right. I'm sorry. And Dr. Fleischer, is it all right? Because I'm not even looking at the agenda. I'm just really into this already. Is it okay if we start with uh, uh, the bullying POC human rights, or am I supposed to be doing something else first?
You are the chair. The agenda is in the chat, but I think both feed off each other very
Right.
well. I'm
Right.
glad
Yeah.
both of you could be on the meeting at the same time. So yeah, we could go with
Okay, let's
just
roll with it. I'm locked in now. So, just to give a little more context, so under the umbrella of C, the Student Engagement and Experience, and I may have a reverse Student Experience and Engagement Committee, we're looking at policies coming up again, and we are looking at the bullying policy, and we're also looking at Chapter 25 and student safety. We've had discussion about marijuana and how we should respond to that. So just giving you all a little more details of what we're working on. And so if you have something that touches on that that I haven't specifically asked about, by all means, please cue us in, okay? And so birthday in April, that is you, Mr. Shepherd. Please tell us about your work and what you're seeing in DC and what parents can be doing better, what educators can be doing better, what policymakers can be doing better. So happy to hear you.
Thank you all. Thank you all so much for having me again. My name is Ernest Shepard. I've been in this role with the Office of Human Rights for 4 years now, which is crazy to think about. 4 years goes by so fast. So I've been the program manager for all 4 years, and I'm really excited to talk to you all today about the gains we've made. Obviously, as any district agency, there's still a lot of work to do. But if you don't know too much about our work, I'll give you a quick snapshot. Our first priority is compliance, is to make sure that schools across the district are government agencies and our nonprofit organizations in the community that we call grantees that receive grant funding through the state government, that they are in compliance with the law. Schools have a little bit more to do, and so we can talk a lot about what schools are required to do, Ms. Colson, which you referenced before. Um, so we do a lot of with compliance. We do a lot of trainings. We are in schools doing a lot of workshops with students, with parents. So we try to be engaged not just with the compliance piece, but also informational, educational, being an opportunity for students to learn and engage with the subject, to learn how to be good role models, be good friends, be kind, all those subjects related to bullying prevention. So we're not just a compliance agency, although that's our main focus. We try to be well rounded and go to schools not just for when things are bad, but for also prevention measures. Hence the name Bullying Prevention Program. So we try to keep to that name. Beyond that, um, resource development, we do a lot of that. I have an example. This year we saw, or last year we saw an uptick in the amount of bullying based on sexual orientation. So one of our goals is to make sure that we're responsive to that type of data. So we did a lot more work around that subject, reaching out to programs that work with LGBTQ youth, creating resources for LGBTQ youth. We created a little guide for them so we can pass out to youth that we encounter when we do our outreach. So that's a lot of the different things that we do. A lot of things that we're hearing as far as when I'm talking to schools and talking to parents, there is more focus on cyberbullying, as you all could probably guess. There's a lot of uh, heightened awareness of around more students having more phones. The data shows that the more access we have to phones, the more students are opened up to um, either being bullies themselves or being bullied by other students. And so that's something that we really try to make sure we focus on in our work as far as doing workshops with students, whether it's solely cyberbullying focused workshops, creating resources again that are focused on how to prevent cyberbullying, what to do, how to respond to it if it does happen. So we're an organization that I think a good word is adaptable. When we see stuff, we try to respond to it. When we get a request for uh, a presentation, we adapt and try to make it fit exactly what the schools or the organization's needs are. If a school is having an uptick in a specific, whether it's cyberbullying or there is an uptick in bullying based on disability or whatever the case may be, we try to respond to it intentionally and not just a general overview of what bullying is. And we try to create our activities with students to be that way as well. Um, yeah, so that's what we do at the youth in OHR with the Youth Bullying Prevention Program. Our compliance efforts over the past 4 years have been a great success. When I came here, not many schools were in compliance with the law, and I think that has completely you've seen an uptick every year, whether it's training schools, putting their policies on their website, getting compliant policies on the books. Um, all those good things. And I think lastly, before I finish, we do a great job with responding to communities' complaints. We have a formal and informal complaint process. Um, every year we reach 100% responding to families immediately within 30 days, which is our metric. Are you responding within 30 days and completing those investigations? And so we receive those complaints and we reach out to schools and try to get those matters resolved as soon as possible to make sure that if a school is not upholding their compliance standards, that we're responding to it and we're making a plan to make sure that schools are know how to fix the situation and not commit the same infraction going down the road. So it's a small but mighty program. We do a lot addressing the hundreds of schools that we have in the district. But yeah, definitely proud of the work we did, and yeah, happy to take your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Shepherd. I know I see Representative Goulet, and he and I all often talk about bullying and the concerns that he hears from his constituents. I know that if he does not ask, we're going to talk about when the bullied is the student who is moved to another school or is forced to opt out and move to another school. But Representative Goulet, please take it away.
Well, in addition to doing a great job chairing this hearing, you also read my mind on this, Representative Colson. That was what I was going to ask. I mean, the complaints I generally get, and I want to first of all, Mr. Shepard, acknowledge the amazing job you guys are doing there. You're really making progress on this. So I don't want the fact that I'm, listing the concerns that are still out there to be like a reflection that I don't think you guys are really making an effort and making good progress on this. So I want to thank you for your work and the work of your team on this. I mean, and the concerns I still get from parents, are that, the bullying, whether it be cyberbullying or in-person bullying, it doesn't stop. A lot of the complaints I got were that there was then a restorative practices, maybe not requirement, but that the students felt then pressure to participate in a process that they didn't feel the bully was taken seriously, and that they felt like they were almost being victimized again by having to sit there through this embarrassing process. So, like that was a huge complaint parents had, and I know it's not mandatory that they participate in it, but like sometimes a student, when administrators are asking, him or her something, they feel like it's hard to say no. So that's one concern of it. And then like I do want to take very seriously situations where the bullying doesn't stop. Like I'm not somebody who ever wants to, immediately go to like a very reactive and punitive level with youth, because youth make mistakes and they will do things that sometimes, like restorative corrective action obviously is the best approach at first. But where I differ, I think, from some people is that if the bullying doesn't stop, if the school has, expressed concern about this behavior and the person refuses to stop it, and for me, it's whether they have an IEP or not. That just determines whether, like what type of punitive action is taken or whether we determine the student can't function in that school. Like we've got to have a level of progressive discipline that addresses the seriousness of people who refuse to stop tormenting their peers. And I just would like to ask you about that. I mean, this became an issue for me when it was our ombudsman, said to us as one of the proposed solutions, that we should try to increase the number of waivers so students that were being bullied could leave the school. And I mean, that's so backwards because it should be up to the adults to set the tone and address the bullying and not force a child who's being tormented to have to go to another school. So those are the ongoing concerns I have. I thank you for your work, and I'd be curious to your reaction to that.
Yeah, thank you. I think first I will say that, it's most instances of bullying throughout the district I don't hear about. I'm sitting in the office away from the schools and only hear about it when there's anecdotal information, if bullying POCs are reaching out to me, or when I'm doing a training, I'll hear about some things, or when parents reach out because they are complaining about a school. So I think a lot of it is there are schools that do things very well, and there are schools that do things not so well. And for example, your first example about doing mediation, I think is that what you're saying? Like people overdo the mediation. That's something that in every single training, whenever I'm training staff, I tell them it's not okay to, if there's a true, sincere bullying situation, you should not be trying to get students to hold hands and sing kumbaya and mediate a situation. Sometimes I find that schools will try to mediate instead of doing an actual bullying investigation, and they try to replace a mediation with a bullying investigation. That's just the wrong thing to do. So I try to um, train on that. I try to reach out to schools, but again, with so many different schools, I'm not schools can be trained by myself, but not all schools take that opportunity. So, sometimes I think that's probably a gap, is that there are different trainings and different methods and different things happening at different schools that is just unclear of always who's doing better job at it than not, if that makes sense.
It absolutely does, and I appreciate that. And I think you're absolutely right that some schools are doing an amazing job and using restorative practices effectively as it should be for students. Like you have two students who get in a fight in the locker room, there's no reason to try to expel or suspend students for something like that. I mean, but if you have a power imbalance where someone is being bullied, like it then becomes an issue where they just feel like they don't want to participate in this. They just want to stop. And that's what's been conveyed over and over to me, is that like they're like the there's too much effort put towards like trying to get the one who's being bullied to understand why the bully is bullying them when it doesn't matter. Like it doesn't matter
Right.
why they're doing it to that student. They just want to be able to go to school and not be tormented. So I think you're absolutely spot on this. And I look forward to working with you and your team. I think our chair's done a great job of bringing this together, and then we'll try to put some solutions forward that like addresses discipline in a responsible and I think progressive way, but also holds students accountable. Because I mean, every student has to be held accountable for their behavior. And if it's a student with an IEP, it doesn't necessarily mean that the IEP precludes them from not tormenting their peers. And if for some reason it does, then that's not the right placement for that student. So I'm really grateful to hear you say what you have about the training, and just thank you for your work and for joining us today.
Thank you. And yeah, I completely agree with you. There's there's room for discipline and there's room for restorative. I think oftentimes schools try to replace the discipline with restorative, and sometimes it's not that's not the way to go. So yeah, I'm completely with you, and yeah, look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's bring Mr. Copeland into this discussion because there's definitely overlap here. Sometimes bullying can lead to conflict that can be student to student, and sometimes we can have conflict around our schools from outside forces, as we did last year at the beginning of the school year. So, Mr. Copeland, again, happy to have you here. Would love to hear about the work that your new office is doing, and then also tell us how you all are gearing up to support schools for the beginning of the school year.
Absolutely, and great to be here with everybody. I was surprised to see you here, Mr. Shepard, as well. It's great to see you. I just want to shout out the work they're doing at OHR. More than appreciate that the supports they offer citywide there. If it's okay, I'd like to share my screen if possible. Good, and then just making sure I got the right screen on view. Can you all see this fine?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So, as mentioned, name's Philip Copeland. I am the executive director now over the DC School Safety Office. And just kind of framing it, the DC School Safety Office is really based off of some work already in place around the country. There are about 40 existing state school safety centers that we kind of modeled our work and what we're going to look like afterwards here. But the DC is very unique. You could look in Maryland, for instance, they have a state school safety center that looks over all their counties. So they're supporting Montgomery County from PG County. But we know in DC, you have 67 separate LEAs within 68 square miles. So it looks very different for us than it would a separate state. So very excited for what we were able to build, and we can kind of talk through that today. Have an agenda, not going to worry about go through this right now, but we're pretty much going to go over all the supports we're offering schools year one and what we're really hoping to have solidified for this year going forward to support our schools. Happy to take questions towards that end or even throughout the presentation as it kind of comes up. But about the school safety office, and I just want to frame it. When we think about safety, typically we think a very reactionary posture. Something happens and we're responding to that. Yes, we want to make sure, law enforcement agencies, our public safety and justice agencies are all a part of this work, but we also want to address the root causes of many safety concerns before they escalate into bigger, larger behaviors. So how are we approaching things? How are we preventing things ahead of time and making sure students, families in need of supports are getting the supports that they need overall? So as mentioned before, we have a very prevention-focused mindset with this office's creation. We're using a lot of models as a kind of, you know, you know, I guess as a guiding light and North Star for our work overall, but we're really adapting it to the district. We recognize, some of our larger local education agencies, LEAs, like DCPS, have central services and central offices in place to really standardize approaches to safety overall. But we have a wide variety of charter LEAs that may have varied supports in place. So one of our main functions as the office is to standardize and to develop just model policies and practices and standard operating procedures that any school can kind of pick up and use as a starting point to either develop their training, to prepare their staff, or to like kind of what are the steps we should be taking if this incident were to occur. A lot of our work is really rooted on the needs of the schools themselves. While the office is new, a lot of the work we've been doing has been developed over the past couple of years. And one thing that we really implement is in this, number two bubble, school safety inventories, which we'll talk a little bit more, but it really is identifying the needs of school leaders directly from the school safety teams responding to incidents as they come up. One consistent thing we have heard from school teams, particularly, across sectors, so between traditional public school and public charter school, is just improving communication as things were coming up and how we can do that more effectively across our agencies as well. So that is something we have been working towards and will continue to expand upon years to come. And then just how do we make sure early intervention services and supports are in place and accessible to schools in most need of that. And most importantly, we want to make sure there's accessible resources that are available in multiple modes. So, we're going to talk more in depth about the tools we're creating, but how do we make tools available 24/7? If, you don't feel like reading through a 67-page document for information, how can you easily access the information that you really need overall? So these are our focal points for year one. Let's dive a little deeper. I'm really excited about this work because though the school safety office is housed in the Deputy Mayor for Education's office, this is a tri-cluster model in partnership with our Deputy Mayor Public Safety and Justice's team and our Deputy Mayor for Health and Human Services team. So when you think of law enforcement, MPD, when you think of safe passage, when you think of violence interruption, the DMPSJ team is really essential to that work. When you think of, what supports the Department of Behavioral Health have, CFSA is a vital partner with the work that we're doing. What resources do they have available for some of our more vulnerable populations? Then we know DHS and DC Health offer various programs to support behavioral health overall, but overall well-being of our youth. So our task is really how do we identify the needs from our schools, and that's within the DMEs. What are we doing there? What are the needs of our school safety teams? And then how are we appropriately connecting them to existing resources across our DMPSJ and DMHHS clusters overall, which I just want to say appreciate both clusters, the leadership, the teams, the agencies across both, because there's a lot of energy about how we identify the needs and get the appropriate level of supports to them. Keeping it moving. So one group that is really going to guide and steer the work of our office, and I apologize, this cut off. I had to hop over my computer because my work computer camera wasn't working. But School Safety Advisory Group essentially is made up of DMHHS, DMPSJ, and DME partners. And as you can see, involving DCPS, Public Charter School Board, OSSI, MPD, DBH, et cetera. And we're also working to add in school leaders to be a part of this as well. We decided to give grace during the summertime, give everybody their breaks to get ready for the school year before we engage them. But this advisory group is really the backbone to a lot of the work we're going to do within the safety office itself. I mentioned before about like the safety inventories and identifying the needs from the schools. What are we going to do with this information? Well, we're going to bring back our trends analysis and all the details that we see from those to this group and then mention, hey, here are the needs we're hearing from schools. How can we best address them overall? And this is going to be a space really devoted to that. We're going to, if there's neighborhood or community-based concerns that come up, if it's coordinating with MPD, identifying, hey, there's these hot spots after dismissal that we notice are frequently coming up. How can we better coordinate responses and supports over that way? If we've identified there's this cluster of schools with escalating behaviors, either between students or with families, are there any health and human service related agencies who have available slots to support those needs, and what that may look like overall? But then also identifying our school safety teams, the people within the school buildings who see everything up front first. How are we making sure they feel supported? They're getting access to the resources they need, trainings, guidance, whatever it may be, and making sure that it's available. And then I mentioned the standard operating procedures. We have a set of 24 standard operating procedures for schools that we are looking to build into a lot of our work, and we're looking to expand that. This advisory group is really the group that's vetting and making sure the guidance we prepare and produce and make public is accurate to the district standards, laws, and policies that are already in place. So in year one, I mentioned beforehand, and I'm going to dive deeper into each of these things separately, but we are making sure information that we produce is available and accessible across multiple modes. So we have in collaboration with CFSA and their 211 warm line, we're making sure that you can access the school safety office through that already existing platform. So 211 is a single access point for school safety office, in addition to citywide services that a school team may need support with. School safety AI assistant, which we'll talk a little bit deeper into, which I'm very excited about, and we're very close to launching our beta platform version. But rather than once again school safety teams flipping through 60 pages, 70 pages, 80, however many pages of operating procedures, policies, what should we do in these situations, they can really get live, accurate, vetted information based off what our groups are working. Our inventory is making sure that the school needs are really centered in a lot of the work that we're doing, make sure trainings and procedures are available for schools in most need of that. And then also expanding communication channels based off need, which we'll dive deeper into. So once again, the purpose of our office is not running direct programming. We do not have that capacity, and that's not what we're advertising to do. We're identifying the needs within the school teams, and we're coordinating and working to connect them with available resources already in place. We don't need to duplicate what's existing and what's already doing well. So 211, as I mentioned beforehand, it already exists. CFSA is doing a phenomenal job with this tool overall. It was put in place to support students, families, district residents abroad. If there is a need overall, housing insecurity is an issue. Access to food is an issue. If there is anything related to behavioral health concerns, they already directly connect that person to an agency to support them and making sure it's a warm handoff and not a dead end, not just giving them a phone number, not just connecting them to random place. So that has already been in place. We are fortunate to be partnering with them. So if a school does need access to us, our resources, our team, they can call 211 and get directly connected with us. So that is available now. Essentially, call 211, ask for the school safety office, and then someone from our team, including myself, will respond accordingly. If you need help, accessing what to do in certain situations, if you want to know who your point of contact is with MPD with your school, you give us a call there. We know there's emergency management tool like Brave app, for instance, we hear that is free and accessible to all schools, whether DCPS or charter, that you can access there. If you wanted to activate your account, you give us a call and we'll connect you with the appropriate agencies to make sure that gets done. So once again, if you want to direct connect to us, a person, 211, give us a call. If you still need connection to overall cities that may be available in DC, go ahead and give this call as well. CFSA team does a phenomenal job. Our role, once again, how do we connect schools, families, students to services and supports that exist? How do we find and make sure if we don't already have the information that we're able to get it and then present it to the school teams in a way that is beneficial to all? And if we don't have access, we don't have current trainings, resources, operating procedures already in place, what steps do we need to go to develop those citywide? What agencies do we need to collaborate with? What experts do we need to consult with to establish these things? One of our major partners that we work with, the National Center for School Safety, they're housed at University of Michigan. They have been pivotal to the creation of this office so far. They offer us a lot of technical assistance, and we also model off of some regional models as well. So how we can develop those based off the needs that we're hearing from schools. Nothing is fixed. We're continuously growing. This is a starting point. We acknowledge we don't have the answer to everything, but we will continuously make sure we're building a robust repository of information for our schools to be able to access in multiple modes. This is an example of our standard operating procedures that we have ready built and vetted that will be available to schools day one. From lockdown, what to do in case of lockdown is necessary, to communication protocols if something is occurring in the community. These are all recommendations that have been put into place. This is available to our teams if it comes up. It will be accessible to schools, but it will also be used to develop our school safety AI assistant. I just want to acknowledge, I know, artificial intelligence is a very delicate topic across the country. There are a lot of legitimate fears around how this works. This is a very controlled assistant that we have developed for school teams. The audience is predominantly school teams overall, but this is a tool that will be available for schools 24/7, 365, be updated based off the information we get verified through our school safety advisory group itself. This is a school-facing and publicly accessible guidance tool for DCPS charter school or private school safety teams. This is grounded in verified knowledge based in answers that is cited from a publicly available source. So we're not using classified information. We're not using, personal identifiable information. This is all publicly available information organized in a way that's easily accessible for school teams. This just makes sure that schools are able to rapidly get information they need. There's a concern that comes up after school. They need to get in contact with their district commander. Who is that? What's the watch commander's information? They can get that information in seconds. This is not an emergency alerting system. This is not going to route you to emergency services. This is not going to make sure 911 gets out in response to this. This does not replace the Rave app I mentioned beforehand. This is not something that you put in specific information. It doesn't even store that stuff. And this is not mandatory. This is a free resource for schools to use. And even though this is publicly accessible, we want to make sure all of our schools are able to access that. It's through Microsoft Copilot right now. It's able to be used through Teams, but we know that every school does not utilize that. So we wanted to make sure everybody had access to it overall. And then once again, you ask a question, it retrieves the information, it shows you where it gets it from, the documentation it gets it from, and we make sure it's staying current. We know people's positions may change, people upgrade, like go to different agencies, people may move around through their agencies or schools. So one thing that we are going to commit to is making sure the information we upload in here is updated quarterly to match our cadence with the school advisory group that we have established. The information, the knowledge base in this tool itself is based off of 301 school campuses, including DCPS campuses, public charter campuses, and private school campuses. They're kind of organized by wards. You have the school-based points of contact aligned with MPD districts, excuse me, and the appropriate context for those MPD districts themselves. We also have crisis and behavioral health tools that are mapped out in this itself, and just helping schools understand what resources or what is appropriate for certain circumstances that takes place. And then once again, the 24 model SOPs mentioned beforehand, this is really backbone in this AI tool itself. So, if somebody, unfortunately, a family reached out to us about a missing student, what steps do we need to take us to school to make sure that everything's okay? It'll give you some verified information and steps to follow through and some points of context to follow through as well. So this is just a rendering. This is just a rough draft, but we're hoping that this will be up on our website before the start of the school year. Once again, it is simply an assistant. So if you have a question on related topics, you could type it in here, get rapid response. Once again, AI can make mistakes, though we try really hard to make sure everything is up to date. There's a lot of different tests we're going through to make sure it works accurately. Once again, if you want to ask questions, who's my point of contacts for school in Ward 8? Group of students are coming out to the building. They made some threats. What should we do? We feel unprepared. Or if you want to use it overall, just to prepare your staff or to help, what trainings are available for this certain circumstance. This is a great tool you can use and utilize. And I want to highlight, no personal identifiable information is ever used in this. It's not stored. If you try to type it in, it will tell you, please avoid using personal identifiable information. No, I guess secure information can be accessible through this as well. There's a concern with AI, can it be used to cause potential harm? There's some emergency safeguards in place. So if any, potentially dangerous, unsafe situations are to be triggered in this, it will just come up as an error and you can't even get an answer feedback for. It's not an emergency tool. You would use 911 regardless. And then this only uses vetted sources. It does not pull from the internet. It does not use its own thinking in that way. You don't get the what is it, the I forgot what it's called. Whenever it makes up its own answers, essentially. Now, going back to all of this work, once again, will continue to be guided through the inputs from schools, through our school safety inventories. I want to say school year 24-25, we've engaged with almost 100 schools, almost split between charter and DC players pretty evenly, just assessing the overall needs of those school buildings, the safety needs overall. We also consulted with some national models from Texas, I know from Illinois, from Virginia, from Maryland, just on some assessment tools that they utilize within their schools. And we developed our own school safety inventory as a result. To date, we conducted these inventories, 37 pilot schools, essentially across 4 communities in the district, just to, get a gauge of what are the concerns, what are the things we're actually hearing within the school buildings themselves. Topics we cover, from traffic and transportation safety overall. So connecting services to DDOT if it comes up, facilities and physical security safety overall, community-based violence or trends that may come up, behavioral health supports that may come up, safe passage and transportation overall, or safety team composition and resources, and if there's additional supports that are needed for those teams in the school buildings. They're pretty comprehensive. We not only conduct them at the school level, but we target communities to support based off of that. So we won't just look at an isolated school, but we're looking at the neighboring schools in that area as well to conduct those inventories for, because a major part of this is not just connecting services to the one school, but it's identifying community-based trends that we can more efficiently navigate supports to overall. And then just a snapshot of some of the information that we were able to see from these inventories. Year one, like community-based violence in the 4 communities that we looked at, we noticed community-based harassment or violence was an issue in half or more than half of the schools that we spoke with. Same with vehicular traffic concerns, unfortunately with drug safety or drug usage overall in the community. And we also see gang and crew activity overall as well. Some additional trends that we've come up, whether it's concerns related to crossing guards and traffic safety, or demands for transportation options that have come up, or just supports for school safety teams that have come up overall. These are various things that we have heard from, and that we're actively working on solutions or bridging supports to schools once we hear those needs. Once again, just examples how I guided our work. Communication gaps has come up. We'll talk about a little bit later, but we developed a community-based communication channel for schools to be able to coordinate with each other as incidents come up. We really take a focus. It's not a charter situation or it's not a DCPS situation. It's a community situation. So you can have, Maryland, you have different districts spread out across geography of the distance. DC, you could have, one charter LEA, another charter LEA, DCPS school, all within a quarter mile of each other. And that demands a significant or a specific response that you don't see in a lot of other places. We are able to support. A school reaches out. We added a crossing guard last year. We don't have one now. Are we supposed to have one? Did they get moved? And able to kind of work with DDOT on, hey, here's the confusion, here's the issue. You should anticipate getting one within the near future. Unfortunately, transportation programs may not be available this school year due to the budget, but last year we were able to use the input from schools to develop some robust emergency seat options for transportation programs that were available at the time. And it was really guided based off the school's feedback that we've heard overall. Once again, just connecting to overall services across the board. How are we getting schools connected to what they need? But I want to highlight very specific example, improving communication channels in communities. We pretty much took the needs we heard from schools. Incident occurs. Not all the schools in the general vicinity is aware that that has even taken place. And that can impact things like dismissal times, arrival times, or even just daily school operations, period. So we utilized Signal app essentially to create a communication, a text channel, nothing too complicated. And we started in the Congress Heights, Bellevue, Washington Highlands footprint, about 19 schools. We brought in the school safety teams of those individual schools. And the main purpose of this chat is to coordinate school safety team responses to incidents as it comes up. So, hey, we noticed a school or student with, your uniform on, there's an issue. Can we coordinate supports accordingly? If there's safe passage support, so if the school's within a safe passage priority area, there's a concern for after school, getting in touch and coordinating with their teams accordingly. If there's a larger concern that they're requesting some visibility from MPD, how do we get that support over there after as well? Once again, not emergency channel, this is a coordination tool. Rave is emergency channel as it comes up. That helps get you connected in 911, but we still say We always recommend school safety teams, one person in charge of emergencies as it comes up. They contact 911, they activate rave, they follow their procedures, they don't amend those. And a separate person should be really checking in with this channel and checking in with school teams as incidents come up. I want to highlight two separate instances before the chat, then after the chat we created, and really highlights why we created this tool overall and hoping to scale it going out. So before the shared channel took place, there was an incident near a middle school, a DCPS middle school, where about 22 shots were fired before school started during arrival times. There's a neighboring charter school up the street within a quarter mile that did not know this took place. It was actually a parent that went and notified the school that this happened. At that point, the school realized there was a group of students who were unaccounted for, and they had to be the ones to go out, and they found the students unharmed, thankfully. This really revealed a gap, just how our schools are being communicated to as incidents come up, and really allowing them to support their students in a more timely manner. There was an incident that occurred after we had this chat. It was within the same neighborhood cluster that took place. There was a shooting, unfortunately, involving students. There were two students that were within a charter school and neighboring DCPS school that were involved. Once emergency services were already responded, the charter school leader reached out and told them that this took place. And then the neighboring DCPS team was able to see that and then reach out to them separately from the chat, and they were able to coordinate supports. There was a neighboring elementary school that shared the street with them. They were like, that's going to impact dismissal because they shared that road and it's a one way. So they were kind of able to get out ahead of it and adjust the traffic coordination around where the police presence was going to be at. The neighboring elementary and middle school down the street was able to make sure their students stayed away from that general area. Then about 15 minutes later, the DC or the alert DC notification went out. So this tool wasn't about notifying or letting them know. It was allowing the school teams to coordinate as these things are occurring live. So as students are planning to leave the building, making sure that the schools have the information that they need to. Just kind of a breakdown. There were 62 total incidents that were followed up through these channels. We eventually expanded out to Ward 1 in addition to Ward 8. But we noticed that most of the occurrences, most of the responses were off school grounds, which highlights the point, the need to improve community-based supports for our schools and making sure the relationship between charter and DCPS schools are locked in step with one another. So the type of concerns, the majority were off school grounds and then many were on school grounds. And then, I more than appreciate MPD support throughout this entire process. Typically, school reach out, this is a concern. Can we get some MPD visibility during dismissal? We reach out to the district commander, they let us know. Or like, hey, there was an issue, there's concern, there's some red tape. I think there was a shooting. Are we good? We reach out to the district commander, they tell us what we need to know, and then let the school know that they're okay. So this has just been a tool to kind of alleviate the weight from both our law enforcement agencies and also our schools to try and bridge that communication overall. Like I said, off-campus situations dominated this. The concerns that we saw here, but also, we all know there's seasons to the issues that come up. So the start of the school year, you see higher incident rates. Winter goes down. We didn't hear much, which was a great thing. And then spring takes place and the escalation of issues concern that came up. Most of the issues were quickly resolvable, so it was a matter of just getting supports on a preventative lens before things escalated further. There are 4 incidents where things had to be escalated, or we had to coordinate with specific schools to address the specific need of a student overall, so in a non-punitive way. But overwhelmingly, majority of the situations were resolved in that day. And then most of the incidents were supported by law enforcement, which we appreciate. Once again, just a reminder, one community, not two systems. So it's all the schools in that community itself and how do we empower them. Just, getting towards the end of this overall, I've been talking about identifying communities and the need to do that. There was been some robust research done in the district around, risk indicators for youth. And one of those is youth living in communities with higher rates of violent crime, particularly gun violence overall. So we looked at 3-year data from 2022 to 2024, and we compiled a list of the number of gun-related violent crimes that have occurred by community in the city overall. The yellow highlights the communities we're focusing our efforts on. The gray ones are grayed out because, Union Station is a gathering spot where a lot of students go to, but there's not school situated, and this deserves a certain amount of attention. A different strategy similar to downtown Chinatown, as well, and then LaFont Plaza, and then Howard U. I think there's only one or two schools in this general neighborhood. So our top 10 schools, which are organized over here, are the schools we're really focusing our efforts going forward. As you can see, the schools, the stars of the schools, we already conducted our school safety inventories, and we chose those communities based off just the incident rates overall. And then we piloted our signal at with two of our top three communities overall. And we're looking to expand that communication tool out to the top five communities that are there. And then once again, we have our two that's already in place. Our plan is to expand out further and then continue our inventory stuff. But schools, everybody across the board, if I can get this clicked, here we go. If you need access to school safety office, call 211. Their team will direct you directly to us. But also, if you have a need of a student, if you need to get them connected to services at DBH or DHS, for instance, you can give 211 a call and they'll happily connect you as well. We have our website, and we are hoping by next week we'll have our beta AI tool available for schools that we're going to share with our teams that we've been working with already. Once again, you can contact by email as well. But that's really it for me. Happy to take any questions that anybody may have.
Philip, thank you so much. That was definitely a thorough presentation. I definitely understand what you are here to do, what you aren't here to do. I do have one critique of the presentation. I think your presentation was about 20 slides, and it was not until slide 18 that I saw data from Ward 4, Ward 3, and Ward 6, the three wards that are represented here. So we definitely want to know what's going on with our constituents and our students. Just messing with you a little bit. Very, very good. Very good presentation. I know that Darren had a question. We're going to open up the floor to questions for you and for Ernest. I know that Dr. Fleischer had a question, and then I'll send it back to Representative Goulet or Representative Best if you all have questions as well. Dr. Fleischer?
Thank you. I'm gonna post my question in the chat. It's kind of lengthy, but I would like members to ask their questions, and then if I can be on the tail end of that, I could read off the question that I post in there.
Sure thing.
Appreciated. Thank you.
All right. I have questions, but Representative Best or Representative Goulet, do either of you have questions? Sure, Representative Goulet.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. So I just got a series of ones. I'll try to do each one quickly. The first one is just if you could provide us, Dr. Fleischer asked for the slides, which I would love to see just to review again. And thank you for the great presentation. If you could give us that, there's one slide that listed the best practices in a series of scenarios you had there. You know, if you can, I'd love to just see what those were, just for my knowledge, to know what we're recommending be done if any of those scenarios come up. I think it was about like 25 or 30 scenarios that you have listed on the slide.
Yeah.
And it would just be helpful, like if we could actually see what those scenarios were just for our knowledge, so we would know. There it is right there. Okay, perfect. Like to know what we are doing in those schools in the event of one of these incidents coming up. So if you could just provide us with that at some point, would be wonderful. Second question, I don't want to steal this one from our chair, but so I'll wait on it. I want to commend her for her work on the trying to develop a system that passes along interventions that we've found successful for youth. Particularly for preventing chronic absenteeism or truancy, and I think that would be something as you do your coordination work would be beneficial as well, because I think it's very valuable. Next thing I had down is as you evaluate the system, because you're kind of the coordinator and the gatekeeper of how things interact. We have like every element of this. We have school-based mental health, we have SROs, we have safe passage workers, etc. Where do you think we need to, if we had additional resources to devote to this, what do you think the gap is that should be filled first?
See, that's tricky. If we had unlimited supports, I'm like, how do we expand our,
Well, maybe not unlimited because then you do all of it. But like, let's
yeah.
say you just had a little bit. Where would you put it first? Kind of all the spectrum of ways you interact to improve public safety, where should it go first?
Absolutely. I think this is stepping more into, I also oversee a committee, Students in the Care of DC, supporting court-involved youth overall. One of our biggest priorities over there is how do we expand our behavioral health continuum in the city and the availability of resources. Just really understanding the constraints we're kind of operating from as a city, particularly with our budget. I think we need to really be mindful of how are we preparing individuals to step into behavioral health, mental health, just therapeutic case management, all of that entire sector? How are we preparing people to step into that space so we have
Yeah.
a robust talent pool of people that we're pulling from? But then additionally, how are we efficiently making sure those resources are available to schools and what does that look like? So I think making sure there's a robust, because we're operating a lot of tier one, tier two supports across the board, MTSS availability. We talk about restorative practices that are there. But I think when we're talking about more acute behaviors, um, just we tend to focus on what we're doing for the whole. I think is the couple hundred students who are at highest risk of the highest incidence in the city. How are we making sure there's adequate supports in place to support them overall? So I think it's making sure that we expand the services in the district that's available. So if it's, expanding partial hospitalization programs that's available for students who may be going through a crisis, making sure that education is a part of that overall. If it's, building a therapeutic support academy or whatever it is for when we start noticing these behaviors escalating and there's an identified behavioral need, how do we make sure they're getting clinical support and they're not being punished by it? And that's not your traditional, safety. How do we address it? Answer. But you think of how many safety incidents escalate from crisis stemming from an
Yeah.
unmet need. So I think overall, like systemically, if we shift that way and we're trying to focus our efforts, building that robust behavioral health support continuum is really important.
And as you're doing that, how do you address the challenge? Because this is one of the things the youth brought up at the Youth Civic Leadership Summit. How do you address the challenge of turnover in the program? Because there is, I mean, we have, sometimes many vacant FTEs, because it's just hard to, attract and retain people in these very difficult roles. So, like, what do you see as like a way to try to, prevent turnover in those positions?
I was literally in a conversation earlier this morning with a group of phenomenal clinicians, and they were just talking about, just like many of our educators, the amount of off hours they have to put in, or they're being contacted about a student's in an immediate crisis on the weekend at like 11 o'clock, and they have to support them or nobody else will be. And I think that's unsustainable. Unfortunately, you have some of the best and the brightest people that's in these fields, and they're not able to maintain because the workload is too severe. And I think that comes back to the availability of people in these professions. Like these are hard fields. Like these are very challenging fields. I think one thing we're looking to really explore is how do we create more local models to recruit and prepare individuals who are from, I think, the city, who have investments in the city, really step into the communities to serve. I talk with students in schools, I talk with students in secure settings. There is a overall need. Like we would love to serve in our community and not have to leave. There's just very limited options how we can do that. So I think how do we create pathways for them if it is social work? If it is stepping into like a safe passage or violence interruption position, if it is like, okay, you get your certificate, you get your associate, you get your bachelor's, and now you get a pathway to getting your master's for free. Like, what could that look like? And I
I'm
think
so
there's
glad you mentioned that. We're doing something like that for nurses. And maybe what we need to do as a board is add that, if we end up reintroducing that legislation, is add that as a profession. Because what we did as a board back when Vince Gray was like it was the Ward 7 council member, is he proposed legislation to grant what you're talking about there, which is the loan repayment program to medical professionals who served in underserved areas, which was all of Ward 7 and 8, but then also other pockets of the city. And what we've done as a board is declared school nursing in that regard, like as a profession that's underserved. And maybe what we do is we try to add mental health professionals in the same way, because that loan repayment goes a long way to keeping people
Right.
around. So
Right.
I'm really thrilled you mentioned that, because I would love to partner with you and our chair on, if we reintroduce that legislation, in the new year, to be able to add that component as well. I think that's a fantastic idea. One last very quick question, and then I'll apologize to my colleagues for asking so many questions. Do you have specific resources that are devoted to cyberbullying, so that like there's experts in that area who tackle that, or is it kind of school by school where everybody has a base level of understanding of how to address cyberbullying?
So I know like the protocols we have in place aren't specific to cyberbullying, though that is necessary, and that's something we do want to build out like thoroughly. And Ernest, I might reach out to you for any guidance or feedback you may have there. But I think it's such an area that's evolving constantly. I know social media has such a role. I think it was mentioned before. I know previous work with Office of Student Advocate, just talking with students, like the role that cell phones and social media plays in conflict is so can't even say nuanced because it's so glaringly clear. But then also we throw in AI, what impact is that going to have? Just like expansion of technologies overall. So yeah, I think this is something we are definitely open to talking and dive, like what is the best practice that should be had? What is working well? I know the School Safety Enhancement Committee that's put into place 2 years ago. I want to say they put out a report, and there were a couple different recommendations that went towards like how do we make sure that kids are responsibly using their cell phones or social media? How do we ensure that we're preventing conflict as it comes up there and being very specific on that? So yeah, I definitely think that's a need that needs to be explored and identified a little bit more clearly. I think the pushes within the schools, how do we limit cell phone usage is a good start, but it's just a start. It's not the end all solution.
Mr. Copeland, I want to thank you again for joining us, and appreciate the chair's indulgence while I ask several questions here. Thank you.
And thank you.
Mr. Shepherd, come on back in, lean in with us. There's several questions in the chat, and let's talk about them. As Dr. Fleischer has put them in the chat, and we're looking at should the definition of bullying be expanded? Talk to us about it. What are your thoughts based on those questions?
Yeah, I've thought a lot about this question and looked at our definition. I mean, I don't know if it's a product of me being so comfortable with the definition or not, but I would love to get more outside voices on what they think about the definition. But I think as it stands, the definition is quite strong. It's a definition that doesn't allow for um it doesn't allow for anyone to just claim bullying and it to be substantiated, which I think is needed because I think a lot of times, sometimes the word gets misused. At the same time, it includes all the different forms of bullying, physical, verbal. It includes cyberbullying. It protects students based on their actual or perceived characteristics. And it's a definition that also lists, like, it considers the impact of behavior on the student in the broader school environment. So it's a pretty strong definition as is. Again, I would love to get more input, but when I compare it to different definitions across in different states, or whoever else have bullying definition of different schools, I think ours is quite strong. So again, I would love to hear more feedback about that, but I do think our definition is strong.
Okay. If we go with that, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Representative Best.
Yeah, no, I wanted to jump in on that because we've heard from several people at different schools who are saying that, the bullying numbers, the reports were like low because certain things weren't classified as bullying, even though it technically really was bullying. And so, with that being said, like that's something that I've heard on several occasions, and I think that's probably why the question of like should the definition be changed was brought up, because we are seeing lower numbers in bullying, but we're not seeing lower numbers of incidents of people actually, what a lot of us would call bullying other students.
Um, that's a good point. I mean, that's not feedback that I've heard. I mean, I trust what you're saying. Um, I haven't personally heard that. I know last year, like, our numbers increased when I compare it to 2020, 2024, 2025 compared to the previous year. the number of the bullying numbers increased. We still waiting on, at the end of this month, we'll see how what the new numbers look like. So we don't have those quite yet. But is the bar too high in our definition? I mean, it's a good question. I'll be happy to explore it to determine if we think that the uh, if we want to make it easier to substantiate bullying. I'm not sure. It's definitely a good question to explore, though.
Dr. Fleischer?
Thanks. Yeah, the updated bullying definition is one aspect of the strategic initiatives that we put together. But another aspect is just the work that the DC Youth Bullying Task Force did, and just going back to that first question, and I'll just read it to stay on course. How might OHR and DME play a role in a reestablished task force? What gaps could be reconvened um, for like recommendation wise from the original one? And what partners would you recommend should be included to best inform how the district can prevent and address bullying in DC, given the rise in cyberbullying and harmful rhetoric students, educators, and families might receive? And just to piggyback on that, we do have one of our policy fellows on the call, Sana Elise Muhammad, who put together this great memo of recent bullying prevention task forces in different states. And so I know back in 2012, it was the task force was put together, but should it be reconvened? I'm sure there should be gaps that they can fill or just reevaluate operationalizing, not just updated definition of bullying, should we update it, but also just teacher training, working with youth to gather their feedback and work at a school level or an LEA level. Like what might that look like, and what recommendations do both of you have? Should it be reestablished?
Yeah, I think there may be value in reconvening a task force or some type of different structured process. Um, the original task force did exactly what it was supposed to do. It created the model bullying prevention policy, which is something that we still use today. It brought agencies together. It helped build out the Youth Bullying Prevention Act and how we enforce it. But yeah, you're right. I mean, more than a decade later, the landscape around bullying has certainly changed. Um, so I think reconvening the task force now might provide an opportunity to evaluate our policies and whether they can be more effective, what things could be included. It could probably talk a lot more about cyberbullying. I know in the current policies that current compliant policies, there's not a lot of talk about what cyberbullying actually is and examples. And we got the AI thing now, which Philip talked about earlier. That's not addressed. So there's probably a lot of stuff that they were not thinking about back in 2012 that could be addressed. I'm thinking about the way that some of the challenges that we have with um, getting getting everybody trained, bullying POCs, and how that's like an ever evolving role and how challenging that can be. Maybe some of those things could be reevaluated so that we can have more consistency across how many schools we have? 117 DCPS schools and 100 something more charter schools. So sometimes it is hard to be consistent, and perhaps a review on how agencies are implementing policies could be helpful.
And with Phil on the call, it also, if it were to be reestablished, now you have a school safety office. So
There
like
we go.
utilizing all these different new resources that weren't available, I'd be very interested to see how at least your two offices can work together on that, as well as like the Office of Student Advocate and others across the city. Thank you. That was really helpful.
I was gonna
Sure.
kind of building on that. I think, having the task force to be able to recommend, policies is very important. But I think also, which I was gonna say, similar to like the advisor group we have established, having agencies involved that can provide technical assistance to schools as these incidents come up, I think would be really like important in this. 'Cause I think it's one of those making sure that implementation is possible. Because this is I feel like the need is expanding. I feel like also like
Yeah.
how are we addressing this at home for families in addition to the schools? Because the schools only have so much say over what's taking place, and then what's happening on social media, what's happening on cell phones, what's happening. I guess my son's playing Roblox in the background, like as kids are gaming with each other. So
Yeah.
I think like if there was an establishment of, there should definitely be an intentionality on like which agencies who may be able to offer supports to schools as it's identified and making it not punitive, like making it, if we do report these bullying numbers, it's not going to lead back to a punishment, but it's going to lead back to resources that can help us address this issue overall to make it more receptive for our schools and LEAs.
Yeah, I agree. You said something about families. I think it's something that I could, if I had a genie bottle, a genie, what is it, a wish from a genie, that I would really want a lot more focus. I don't know how it's possible, but how we educate parents about this type of stuff. I think schools can be as diligent and proactive and as wonderful as we want them to be. But if they go home and are learning how to resolve conflict and how to respond to bullying just in a completely different way than what the school is trying to teach them, I find that like in all of my years in DC, it's been 8 years now. I worked at DCPS and now at OHR. That has been a challenge is trying to get the schools and the parents and just the way that they teach the conflict resolution, all those different type of strategies. That's really a big part of the challenge. And if I could, I would definitely improve the resources that we can provide to parents for sure.
And, two things that came out, like two quick things, really. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and I don't want to like take up most of the conversation. I understand the members are on the call, but one is our student advisory committee did research on mental health and well-being resources and just talked with their fellow students. And one thing that came up was just having a trusting adult in the first place, someone they can trust to go to and talk to about safety issues like bullying. And I'm curious to see like building that trust within the school, what that might look like. And also I know from a chronic absenteeism perspective, what has been working in states across the US, including DC, is this push, like text pushes to parents about the importance of attendance. If there was a push also for the importance of understanding bullying, talking to your child, things like that. Is there anything like that that's out there, or could that be something that the state could utilize?
Yeah,
I
I'm not
think
sure. I haven't. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no, I was going to say, I think any way that we can educate our families and students, just keeping them up to date, like warning signs to look for, like I feel like everything's new all the time. So just making sure families are up to date with like, hey, if you're noticing this, like, or this is a new trend we're seeing, just making sure it's relevant. But it's also, I think to your point earlier, too, Ernest, I feel like the whole social emotional learning rollout that we've had, you can do everything well in the school building. If it's not met at home, then it can be like for nothing.
Yeah.
So being very purposeful of what that would looks like, I think that's a strategy that could be adapted for sure.
Um, I know this meeting well, we're scheduled until 7 o'clock. I'll turn it back over, or not, it's not me to turn it back over to anything, but thank you both. I didn't know if any other members had questions. I'm done with mine, but I would love to reach out to both of you offline, and I'll work with the members and capture any follow-up questions. Um, but Representative Colson, did you have anything else or any other members?
I don't know that they're questions, more so maybe just comments, since we're all here, thinking and brainstorming together. I heard something maybe before school was out for summer, and it resonates with me. And someone said that bullying has the power to alter the shape of a person's soul, right? That's really, really profound because it means that, that has an impact that's lifelong. And we don't want that to happen to students or even adults for that matter. So going back to the comment between Representative Best and Mr. Shepherd, where you said that, maybe we can lower the bar on the definition of bullying, I think really what we want to get to the heart of is to make sure that students are okay. And so if that meets the definition of bullying, or if that meets the definition of being unkind or being a meanie, whatever it is, how do we get that information? Going back again to the conversation, how do we get that information to parents in advance? Because we're all trying to be here to be proactive. And so I don't know about you, Mr. Shepherd, because you haven't seen the data yet, but I would just say for my school, the number of bullying investigations that I had to do increased dramatically this year because we're
Mhm.
all concerned about the well-being of students. So no, it may not have reached the definition of bullying, but something has happened. Something has happened to hurt someone, to make them not want to come to school, to make them want to cut class, etc. And so while we're looking at the definition of bullying, I'm also thinking about the process that we have now with the investigations. And I'm just curious, once the investigation is done and we say it's substantiated or we say it's unsubstantiated, then what happens then? Because it kind of feels like um, we're done with it with the adults, quite honestly. And we know that sometimes things can linger with children. We know that sometimes the language changes up and a child could be being harassed right in front of our face and we don't even know it. By the way, the new 6-7 is out. You all have children. Quiet on the Creek is up next. I just had to find out what that meant before my kids came back to school so I can be on top of that. But I'm just thinking in terms of if whether or not we expand the definition, change the definition, how do we work proactively with all of our agencies, which also kind of brings me back over here to you, Mr. Copeland, because I love the idea of having this task force or this committee with all of the agencies. And I would really encourage you maybe to consider bringing in ANC as well. I mean, they are there in the community, they see a lot of things. When I was an ANC commissioner, a lot of things that happened in my school, I wanted to connect to the larger community. So just no real question, but just additional thoughts on how we can get to the heart of the matter, which is to make sure that our children are safe, they're feeling good and secure, they're happy, and they're able to learn.
Yeah. I mean, to your question about the investigation process and like when it's concluded, I try, well, not try, I do. I tell schools when I'm doing training or talking to them individually, doing a bullying point of contact training, whatever the case may be, I don't think the substantiation is like the most important part of if it's not the most important part of if we're going to help the student or not. Whether it's substantiated or unsubstantiated, we can still offer supports. And at the end, when we're delivering our outcome letter to families, it should include, whether it's substantiated or unsubstantiated, it should always include this is what we're going to do moving forward. It should always talk about um, this is what we're going to do. We're going to offer mental health supports until this date. If you want it longer, let us know, or whatever the case may be. Like, it should not be the end when we send that letter. The supports and the measures that we put in place should continue as needed. Um, and when we put in safety plans, we can put them in and reconvene and talk about if they need to continue or not. Like, those conversations and those supports should continue as needed. So I never want a school to feel like if you don't find bullying, that your role and your efforts are just complete, because they're not. Somebody was hurt, somebody was upset, and so we should still respond to that. And I think schools have a opportunity to be creative and intentional with how they're responding to each individual case of conflict or bullying or whatever the case may be. It just needs to be appropriate to what actually happened.
And I agree with you completely. And I know that that's the practice of DCPS to connect students with the social worker, the counselor, the check-in, what have you. But from a policy perspective, I'm just
Mhm.
wondering if that is something that we should look at the policy and also include so that that's happening across the city. Because when I look at bullying policies for other states, and I can't recall which one, but I know that they
Mhm.
go back and they look at the progress again in 30 days and 60 days and 90 days. So there are three
Gotcha.
different points
Yeah.
after after that investigation has been done. But I want to raise something that really comes up often when we hear from parents in our public meetings, and I want to make sure that we touch on that, which is parents feeling like they need to take their child out of a school and put them somewhere else for the safety of their children. And I know, Mr. Copeland, you made it clear what your office does as the connector, but I'm just curious while we have both of you all here, what your thoughts on that with our constituents feeling that they are not getting the service that they want from our LEAs and that they need to move uh, in other words, the victim here in this situation.
I know just when we're talking about bullying, I just want like I feel like there's a spectrum of behaviors where bullying is a piece of that, but like conflict overall or just like, escalating tensions. And I really want to get in a position where we're equipping our schools with appropriate tools and to have that accessibility and resources based off that need that's there. Because I know there are instances where it may be like a student with a disability and there's behaviors that's a manifestation of that disability where it's impacting peers in their classroom. And the family of the student being harmed by those behaviors is deeming it bullying. But in case we can determine its manifestation of that disability. So how are we making sure the school has those supports to be able to support both students in that situation? But at the same time, that's a horrible situation to be in, where it's like my child is continuously dealing with this and we don't feel safe being there. So I think identifying like what the root causes of these behaviors overall is a priority with us. And I just want to, I think year one, our focus is really where our audience is school teams, school safety teams, just making sure that the supports there are adequate. If bullying is feeling, we know bullying is an issue that comes up, community-based conflicts that come up, conflicts with adults and families coming up is coming up. So how are we making sure that there's supports available as all of these things kind of progress and we're dealing with the root causes? And it's a delicate dance because like your child's being harmed repetitively. Is there a power dynamic? Are they being targeted? Like is there could be somebody who's perpetuating a lot of stuff, not in a targeted way, but they're in the middle of a lot of different things and may not fall in that definition. So just how are we making sure our schools have the tools in place to be able to adjust appropriately, which is it's not an easy dance. And I appreciate those districts that are leading the charge. Just like how can we make sure we're adapting it to our models in DC too?
And for
Representative
my,
Millett.
yeah, just a follow-up question is something Mr. Copeland said, and I think you mentioned there. Uh, I hear what you're saying, Mr. Copeland, about the students who may have a disability that may be influencing the behavior, or sometimes students have disabilities that are unrelated to the bullying. But to me, I want to make sure we're focusing on the victim here. And to me, it's relevant for how we treat a child if they have a disability that's causing them to, constantly disrupt the educational environment to impact their peers' experience there. I mean, but we want to make sure we're educating students in the least restrictive environment possible for their disabilities. However, if they can't function in a setting without acting this way towards their peers, there's got to still be escalating, maybe we won't call them consequences, but escalating actions for that student. Because we can't have a situation where all the other students in the classroom have to live in fear because one child's disabilities are causing them to react violently or react in a constantly disruptive manner. So I mean, are there changes we need to make right now to DC code to address this? Like, because I mean, it's a situation that's really concerning, and we heard it from some witnesses who testified before the state board about students being on an IEP, but then like, I mean, it sounded very close to like a sexual assault of classmates in the classroom. It was certainly assault, and again, that's not appropriate. And I don't care whether the student has an IEP. I mean, if they can't function in a classroom, we need to send them to a non-public placement where they can function in a way that meets their needs.
So yeah, I think our focus is the person being harmed by it, but then also the person who's having those behaviors. The disability one was just a specific example, but I think every child at the end of the day, there's something that's causing the behavior, and how are we addressing that? And if we don't adequately address it, we're going to see a repetition of that behavior. And unfortunately, we see the predictive factors that lead to court involvement overall. So I'm like, we operate from the sense, our children are our children. How are we giving schools the tools? Because I agree with you. One child should not be able to disrupt the entire classroom, like should not be able to cause that completely. But at the same exact time, how are we supporting the kid and not isolating them, or just punitive measures that put them in a space where they're not isolated and the behaviors escalate and becomes a more serious situation because we didn't address the need to begin
I
with.
think that gets to what the chair talked about with her 30, 60-day, 90-day review plan to see whether or not like the interventions are working, and then check back in to see if that student, despite interventions, is still acting in a way that's making their peers uncomfortable, bullying, or disrupting things. And that's not because maybe the student just can't control themselves because of a disability. Uh, but then are you prohibited from then taking the action you need to get the classroom back under control?
It's it's not an easy situation to solve. And it's one of those where we're serious about making sure everybody's restored and full and safe afterwards. I think those complexities have to be explored for sure.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate the dialogue.
Absolutely.
Well, again, it has been wonderful to have both of you here. I appreciate both of you all being here together because the work coincides, and you all have really helped us as we move forward with our priorities for this year. Mr. Copeland, thank you so much for being here, and we look forward to receiving your presentation. And Mr. Shepherd, I know you have a presentation because I've seen it before, so if you want to drop that and send that to us to share as well, we will appreciate that greatly. Thank you so much for spending one of your last evenings of summer with us, and we look forward to seeing you all again in the fall real soon.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Take care.
All right, gentlemen, we have two other things, and lady, we have two other things left on the item: student attended course and demonstrated proficiency. Dr. Fleischer, is this my item? This is mine, right?
Yes, but while we have her on the line, could we Sarah Elise put together that memo? Would you mind if she just shares just some quick like two or three highlights from that? Just
Oh,
following my
okay.
discussion.
That's what you mean. Yes, absolutely. I sent her a big thank you via email when I saw her at the working session. I thanked her as well because it was a wonderful brief. So yes, Miss Muhammad, please share your findings.
Hi, good
And
evening, everyone. Thank you, Darren. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Hi, good evening, everyone, and thank you, Darren. So yeah, I think Darren just put the memo in the chat as well. Just with a quick like overview of some things that I found. I begin with just some national and local bullying rates that and impacts on the students, and some quick findings that I found. Um as we all know, despite the overall bullying rate going down from year to year, a huge concern, as we just spoke on before, is cyberbullying, and that has in fact increased in the past 4 years, 3%. And so that's a huge focus for a lot of parents as well as students, as 53% of teens themselves call it a major issue. So that's something that I definitely look forward to digging into more and how to solve that issue for our students. Um, some other quick facts that I looked into is I know we're discussing bringing back the DC anti-bullying task force, and so I brought a couple of different examples of other states that had task force. I know I jumped a little bit down, but some states such as Maryland, New Jersey, and New York who are doing really great work. With either setting up their task force or they've already completed the work. And I just gave some of their sample recommendations that they had throughout the span of the task force. Another quick fact that I found extremely interesting, I know we were discussing students and what happened as after a bullying incident has occurred. The student typically either leaves the school or feels like they are forced to leave the school because of the bullying incident. And something that I found really interesting as far as what other states do in that sort of incident is in Nevada, the student's parent who is affected by the bullying or their guardian is able to assign the perpetrator of the bullying to a different school as a disciplinary action. And so I will be really intrigued to hear more about that process and how they include the parent into that discussion and decision to sort of remove this, the perpetrator from the school. And so that lastly moves to my the appendix C that I also listed on the memo, just a few of the like possible potential roundtables or guest speakers that either worked on some of the aforementioned bullying task force or are doing a lot of work in their states surrounding bullying. And so I hope that is of use to you all, as well as the sample panel and guest speaker questions for them that follows that. And just some questions that I thought as I was doing this research will be really interesting to learn more about. So yes, and I'm happy to answer any other questions of anything I didn't speak on in this memo. I know we're pushing up on that 7 o'clock time, so I just wanted to give a quick overview of everything.
Boulay?
Ms. Muhammad, I want to thank you for your work on this, and I think it's definitely great. You know, you've looked at nationwide on this. You know, for me, I'm really thought the discussion we had. I don't know if you were able to hear all of it. Was very illustrative about the concerns about repeated acts of bullying. In your research, were you able to see any state that tackled that issue particularly well, where there was a situation where like they looked at the 30-day, the 60-day, or the 90-day, and then tried to ascertain whether like additional escalation of the discipline needed to occur?
Some work that we received from ECS, it listed out a couple of different states. I know California has a very strict policy on how to address incidents. I'm not sure if they specifically listed it out as far as like 30, 60, 90. I can go back and do.
Well, I just did an example, but like if there was anything where a state tackled like the length, like the long term, to see if whatever solution is being proposed stuck.
I think I'll have to go back and see specific examples for that, but I would definitely, let me write that down. Find some long-term examples for you.
Yeah, and I liked the discussion you had about, I don't know if we'll be able to do anything like the parent, being able to assign the child to another school here. I don't think we'd be able to get away with that, but it's something that I think highlights that like there really is a concern like in DC, and we're very, I mean, just I don't want to say illogical, but it's counterintuitive that we're forcing the victim uh, to have to leave. And instead of like approaching this as like there's youth who need behavior corrected and it needs to be corrected and they need to correct the behavior. Like, and that's got to be the focus. And yeah, I think it was great that you kind of, were able to propose a context where it showed how other jurisdictions are treating it. Even if we couldn't do that here, we should, I think, take more action to hold students accountable for their behavior and not just let the victim feel like they have no option but to leave their school. So thank you so much.
Of course, thank you.
Yeah, no other comments for me other than, again, great job and thank you for this. And I'm sure uh, I will be looking back on this as we continue our work.
Thank you. I'm glad it's helpful. Thank you.
All right, we are 3 minutes over time, so let me run through what I wanted to update you all on, and then we can talk about work plan and new business very quickly if there is any. So I've been really looking at the student attendance and course credit concern, and I've shared that with the other committee. I don't have any updates, but I do want to share two things that I heard in the national news that just lets me know that we are on the right track in looking at this. One, drop an emoji or something in the chat if you've already heard this story so I don't have to tell it again. There was a teacher in Florida who was terminated from her position because she assigned her students the grade or the score of 0. And she did that because they did not turn in any work. So she said they deserve a 0. However, the policy states that she had to give no less than 50% to the students, even though they didn't do any work, because the district said that it impacts their mental health. And once the student has a 0, it's very difficult for them to continue to try and overcome that. That's number one. And then two, just today on my way home from WTOP, I don't want to say which school because I think I might get it wrong. Anyway, their largest college, which is the College of Arts and Letters, is now deciding that they're not going to give a letter grade. They're going to give a pass or no credit on the transcript, but you can still receive a grade and talk with your professor about how to improve. So when you look at a particular course on your student's transcript, it will not be a letter grade. The student will still receive a letter grade. And they said that they're moving. Oh, it was University of Michigan. See, I was
Oh,
trying to make sure.
yeah.
I was trying to make sure I wasn't saying that just because they're my rival. I'm Michigan State here. But yes, it was them. And that's something that they're proposing because they said that over 30% of their students reported having mental health concerns and anxiety over grades. So those are just two things, but I am concerned. I won't take a stance by it. I am concerned about the service or disservice that we are doing to our students when we are giving out grades or creating policies that hinder them from learning as much, from demonstrating proficiency, from arriving to class on time and staying for the full duration of the course. I'll just stop there. So I will continue to work. But if you all have thoughts, I see your face, Representative Goulet. If you have thoughts about that, please chime in. And if not, oh, we got a face. Yes,
Well,
Representative Best.
right
Or
ahead.
Goulet, go ahead.
I just want to say that as a Notre Dame law grad, your concerns about the University of Michigan, I saw their policy, certainly well-founded. I mean, anything that Michigan does probably is cause for concern. So I definitely share your troubling thoughts about what they're doing there. But in all seriousness, though, I think those are two good examples of not preparing students for the real world. And I think we have something here in DC that maybe we do need to tackle too. And that's the fact that we allow students to make up work all the
Yeah,
way, till the end.
yeah,
And that's something I would really like to see the board tackle in the new year because it's not setting like no one's going to baby the children throughout their lives with that. Once they get to the real world, whether it be a career, whether it be college, I mean, they're not going to be able to do that. So like, why are we allowing them to do it in high school? And certainly there are exceptions if there's a student who went through a difficult period with a health issue, with some sort of family instability, homelessness, or something like that. I mean, obviously we want to make accommodations for a student there, but allowing students to basically not do work and then turn it at the end of the semester, and then force teachers to try to grade like assignments. It's much less efficient to grade assignments than just be able to grade all the same assignment. But then to have to grade a stack of work that's been throughout the year, I mean, is absolutely insane. And we should not be setting our students up for failure by coddling them with policies that frankly don't make any sense, and it will hurt the kids later in the real world. So I thank you for raising those two issues. I agree with you completely, and would love to tackle that challenge in the new year with you.
Yeah, well, let me be clear. That's exactly what we're talking about. Is already with the Committee for College and Career. So when we take two policies that DC has that was formed with good intention, but now put together, you create the loophole. So you have the attendance policy that says you can come to class, a portion of the class, and be counted as present, right? Or you can still turn in tardy notes and late notes and still get credit. And then you couple that with the grading, saying that if you were absent, you can turn in these assignments up until the last day, which is a disservice. And I think it undermines the profession of teaching to have our teachers to go back and grade all this work at the last minute. But I'll stop there. But yes, that's what we're discussing right now. Representative Best.
Well, you
So
guys
good
know
to see
how
you,
I feel on this
Representative Best.
topic. Listen, our schools are often microcosms of society, and quite frankly, not all systems are set up to ensure that everyone succeeds. And I think right now, this is a system that is set up to ensure that everyone isn't succeeding. Now, we might say that it is to help their mental health and things of that nature, but it's not going to help their mental health when they can't get a job. It's not going to help their mental health when they fail out of school. So we have a responsibility as people who have some type of power, not a lot, but some type of power to bring up issues like this and advocate for it, because that's one thing that we can do is we can advocate. We might not be able to set rules, but we can advocate. And I think that as long as we have a board, we should be advocating to ensure that policies like this do not stand. Because if we are saying that our kids are able to get 50, they're able to get half credit for doing zero work. I don't know what job you can have that will allow you to do half the work and or no work and get credit for it. It doesn't happen like that. You'll get fired. You won't be able to succeed on your own. And so if we're trying to ensure that our kids are not fully dependent on others for the rest of their lives, we have to make sure that we get started early. So that's where I am. I'll take a stance.
Well, we'll be standing shoulder to shoulder, side by side. Yes, and
Yeah.
I just want to point out an inequity with that. Even with the student who is getting the 50% who did nothing, what about the student who actually tried and only earned a 50%? Like that's unacceptable. I see Miss Muhammad said that her mom in Georgia is not allowed to give out zeros as well. And I'll say this one more thing, and we'll move on. I always quote about the wage gap for students who are educated, I'm sorry, for residents who are educated here in DC compared to students who come and become residents from other states, other counties, other LEAs. And I'm just wondering if there is something going on where we are not supporting our students because maybe there is a problem with proficiency. We're giving out 50% or grades for work that's not being done, and maybe there is another LEA that's actually holding their students accountable, and when it's time for us to get to the interview table or the application, there is this obvious distinction. And so I think we should be doing everything that we can, more not less, to make sure that our students are able to compete with other graduates from other cities and states.
I want to add one last thing, and sorry for just jumping in like this. I
Welcome.
think that we often cater to the bottom because we don't think that they can do better. And I don't believe that, right? Like I believe that they can do better, so I refuse to cater to the bottom. And I think that we really need to start making some decisions as to if we believe that our students are capable of doing better. If we believe that our students are capable of doing better, then we have to actually start catering more up here and bring everyone up, as opposed to allowing the people at the bottom to uh, continue to just like hover and make excuses for certain things. Now, I do know that we have life, man. It's our kids go through a lot. They face so many challenges, but as adults, we're also going to face a lot of challenges. And so it's the harsh reality that we have to live. And so that's not me saying that, this is like a no excuses type of scenario. Like obviously there are ways in times where you can connect and make a pathway forward for the kids. But I also I don't want us to cater to the bottom anymore. I don't want us to, do that, because the logical excuse is, well, we'll say that, you can always make up your work, or you can always do this, because we just don't believe you can do it when we ask you the first time. No, no, I don't believe that. I think that we have to hold our students accountable. We have to hold our families accountable. We have to hold our teachers accountable. And so, bravo to that teacher who gave that individual a 0 when they earned a 0. So, hey, unfiltered. This is where I'm at. Let's do it.
I love it. Thank you. All right, this will come back up again. All right, Dr. Fleischer, we are coming back to our priorities. Is that correct? What's on next? Our work plan review.
Correct.
Yes.
I'm going to share my screen shortly and just advise the committee on just closing out our strategic initiatives for 2026. Just before I do that, are there any action items coming out of this discussion that we just had? I know this is something part of the College Career and Life Readiness committee as well, but was this just to make sure and just to capture this? This is just to gauge the student engagement and experience committee members' thoughts on this topic. Is that correct? Or are there any action items
There
that
aren't any action items. It's already with the other committee. I'm just sharing there's overlap. We're talking about attendance. This overlaps with their work as well. So just giving an update and having a discussion about it.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm
Thank
going to
you.
share my screen. I know I'm going to be very light on this. And again, just offline, share this and my recommended next steps on this. But just closing out the year, we have completed SR 26-4. We haven't really conducted any follow-ups with agencies on that resolution, but I could work with you all offline on that. Host a Youth Civic Leadership Summit. We've completed that for this year. Examine DC's bullying definition and reestablish the Youth Bullying Task Force. That is in progress. And that's something I did want to raise, though, is that this is one of our strategic initiatives. So maybe I could just make this bright yellow. But I advise the committee to raise this a resolution topic and description at the September 2nd working session, just so it could be assigned to the committee, and then we could continue to work on the resolution, do offline and online discussions with experts. Sonalise shared her recommendations for certain states to reach out to. I could work with you offline, but aiming for at the latest December, a November, December vote on bullying. I want to go down really quickly and share a few others, and then I could take questions or thoughts on these. But another one was vote on a resolution and legislation for the reduction of school trailers. That is still in progress, I believe. And I know this is something raised by Representative Goulet.
I can weigh in at the end once you go through
Okay,
the whole
great.
thing.
And then these other ones, provide elevate student voice is another strategic initiative, as well as uh, raise or vote on a resolution based on OSA and SAC annual report recommendations. Again, these are 2026 strategic initiatives. I advise the committee to combine these two. I know in September, or it should be, it's likely September that the Office of Student Advocate and Dan Davis will present their safety, their annual report and their safety report, and that will have recommendations on student safety. but we will also have our student advisory committee reconvene in September. And so October and November, we can tap them to get their thoughts on both the safety recommendations as well as well-being related recommendations for schools. So combining these two strategic initiatives into one resolution that we can raise at the September 2nd working session, a resolution focused on student safety and well-being based on OSA and SAC recommendations. And that would follow something similar to the Youth Bullying Prevention Task Force resolution. So aiming like September through December. Lastly, a vote on resolution supporting Eric's ID Amendment Act. That is complete. And so we have a few outstanding ones. Two other quick notes is that September is Attendance Awareness Month. I just wanted to put that up on your radar. And October is Bullying Awareness Month. And I know Representative Colson, you raised the bullying panel for our October public meeting. And so I'm gonna pause there. I know there might be questions, but thank you for sticking it out for this slightly longer meeting.
I don't see the hand raise feature on here. I'm trying to.
It's fine. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So just I love the longer meeting. I know we typically keep them shorter, Dr. Colson, but I think having this testimony here, like almost like a roundtable type thing, has been really extremely helpful. So I've really enjoyed it. I think we're making great progress in this, Dr. Fleischer, and thank you for sharing it. Looking at the ones that I think I have been involved with, this issue of the trailers, there was 3 letters that the state board staff was going to send out. One was on getting an update on nurses. The second was the language I wrote on the trailers, like in the space for pre-K 3 that was still needed. And then the last was on getting an update from OSSI on the special education transportation. Like, do you know where the status of those letters are? Because I was waiting to do the resolution on the trailers until we got that information.
I can find that out after this meeting.
Okay, great. And I can follow back up to with Bernice on this because I'm going to talk about tomorrow about something else anyways. So I just want to make sure that those letters went out because I know the special ed transportation ones is a big deal for some residents in my ward. The bullying definition, I mean, for me on this, I'm less inclined. I mean, I feel like the people on this committee, have the right answers on this. I feel less of a need to do the task force. And I feel like the chair's got us on the right track on this. I would just love to see us, put forward a recommendation with some solutions. And then kind of like we did with the governance task force, the mini task force we did. Once the resolution was drafted, I was happy to sit down and then get a bill ready if there was any legislative changes needed to this. So if we need to update the definition DC code, like if the chair puts forward a proposal on what we can do to address youth bullying, whether it be updating it for cyberbullying, updating accountability. I mean, I'd be glad to, work with her on the statutory changes. So I feel like, we could do the task force still, but I mean, I don't know if that's as important as just putting some actual solutions out here because we've talked about this for a while, and I think we've got the right ideas on the table, and we should just draft it now. And then lastly, I like your idea of combining those two, issues there when they get the OSA report out of the students, kind of see an intersection with what they proposed at the Youth Civic Leadership Summit that would allow us to finish those, and then we have a all green dashboard for the finish there with everything labeled complete. And I think that would be great. So I just want to thank you for tracking it all. And thanks for the chair for, her work on this. And, I'm committed to help out as a member of the committee. Like if there's some technical things I can help with on this, but definitely I'll try to take care of number 4 because I feel like that one's on me. And I just want to find out where that letter is. And once I get the data from the letter, I can draft the resolution pretty quickly.
Yeah, I would agree with combining. I definitely would love to see all green on this tracker. Thank you so much, Dr. Fleischer. After this discussion, I think the focus should be on two things. One, the specific broadening of cyberbullying, speaking more towards that. And then I think that there should be more accountability or follow up with checking in on students to see how they're doing post school investigation and um, the recommendations that the school or uh, supports that they have put in place. Is that working? So how do we circle back and check in on students and check in with families? That will be my thought.
And Madam Chair, not to glaze you, as my kids would say, that's the word they use now, but I think what you hit the nail on the head with earlier is like checking in at the 30 to 60 and then 90-day period to see what's going on here, like to see whether the bullying has stopped, whether the interventions are effective. And if they're not, then we need to follow up. Like, so that's like, because I'm not looking to escalate like interventions or discipline if it's not necessary. But like, I think the most important thing we can do as we look at bullying, is check back in to see if the student is still being victimized. So I think you nailed it with that, and that's what I mean. I would love to see us focus on, as part of this resolution.
And we like a resolution concerning the youth bullying task force. It could, if we were to do one, it could mention at the very least acknowledge the rise of cyberbullying over the years, bullying, the current climate, and still like use language on youth bullying task force, like a consideration for that to be reconvened if that is something like I know it's um yeah, something that like one of the goals for this committee. Uh I don't know if you have thoughts on that, but like at least a resolution with language considering reconvening it or something to revisit uh the policies that are in place and how to update those, but just like a citywide effort that might have a bit more resources than the state board doing it alone.
Okay. I mean, that makes sense. So what you're saying is a resolution. It could, well, let me back up. We can still have the public meeting in October. Based on our discussion today, perhaps we can focus specifically on cyberbullying and what that looks like and what other experts are doing about that. We can write the resolution to include that language. We can write the resolution to include the recommendations for the 30, 60, 90-day check-in, and we can also include a recommendation for the youth bullying task force. Is that what I'm hearing?
Correct. In addition to Sana Lisa's memo, she came up with excellent questions for other states to answer. So we could do those offline as well. All of this can be running in the background. I would advise we at least do some outreach. The staff, we can do outreach to those. And I could reach out to you, Dr. Colson, and others, at the entire committee on who we'd like to reach out to, just agree on those questions that Silent Elise recommended, but any others, and just continue gathering that information ahead of that October panel. And that might even help us identify questions for that panel, that initial outreach before the panel.
I will confess my ambivalence to whether we reestablish the youth bullying task force or not. Like task force, I just roll my eyes about kind of right now. I mean, I feel like the solutions the chairs put on the table don't need a task force. But if ultimately you all put forward a resolution that has a task force in it, I'm going to support it. I mean, I think it could be useful, but like I think part of this is just putting some solutions on the table and then seeing if we can get DCPS to implement them. But I'm on board with whatever, is proposed with this. I think we've already got a great start on it. So I'm looking forward to supporting what you guys are doing with this.
I think having the task force potentially puts more teeth to the resolution because we're not talking just DCPS. We're talking about all of the LEAs. So
That's a
I,
good point. That's a
I
great
think
point.
it doesn't hurt.
Okay. That's a great reason. I'm on board with whatever you're going to propose with it. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Okay.
That's everything on my end, though. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Dr. Fleischer. Thank you, Ms. Mohammed, Representative Best, Representative Goulet. This has been a rich meeting. Thank you all so much. I would yield you back your time, but I'm over. So thank you for your extra time. Have a great evening, everyone.
You too. See y'all. Thank you, Darren. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.